Set a few months after what we saw unfold in episode 5 with Henry and Sam, episode 6 was set in the environment where we saw that Joel and Ellie arrived at Jackson, Wyoming, where Joel was reunited with his brother. However, we saw the two different lives that the brothers had gone on to lead and the somewhat disappointment that Joel felt in the fact that his brother had been able to start a new life and live a happy one in a time where there was so much death. With this episode focusing on relationships, loss, and tapping directly into our emotions, let's break down and explain the episode. So let's get into it. Here is The Last of Us episode 6, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Let's start by discussing the ending. As we embarked onto the final moments of the episode, we saw that Joel had given Ellie the opportunity to stay with him after delivering one of the more emotional scenes in the episode, where we saw the both of their fears being brought up in a conversation, and a moment that's iconic within the game. This was Ellie's fear of being alone and the fact that everybody that she'd ever known had left her or died, and also Joel's buried grief that had started to resurface 20 years later. This occurred due to Ellie overhearing Joel saying that he was going to leave her with Tommy to complete the mission. However, we saw that Joel cared too much about Ellie and couldn't leave, so they both left together. With the both of them setting off to go and find the Fireflies at the University of Eastern Colorado, we saw that the Fireflies had actually departed, and instead of them being there, there was a group of hunters that had followed Joel and Ellie. In an attempt to escape, we saw Joel kill one of the individuals, but he ultimately got harmed by the one that he took out when something was pushed inside of him. This tapped into the mindset that we heard all throughout the episode that was gone from Joel, the side that brutally killed people. However, we saw his mindset shift in this moment and he tapped back into it in order to survive. The sheer focus, rage, and anger that he had in fighting to protect Ellie, he didn't even realize that he'd been harmed, showing a side to Joel that we'd not seen before. In watching his daughter be killed all of those years ago and the memory of it now resurfacing, it's caused his fatherly instinct to be out around Ellie, and despite not even meaning to, he does protect her with everything that he has, as we saw a countless number of times in this episode. The grabbing of her hand, the reassurance, and the sticking by her side. As the pair got away, we saw that a bleeding Joel fell off of his horse and we saw Ellie over the top of him in tears, worried and panicked at the fact that she couldn't survive without him. Once again showing us that somebody that she cared about was on the verge of leaving her. This was the most emotional that we'd seen Ellie throughout the entirety of the show. That and also when she had the argument with Joel moments before. So there's a deep sense of care that she actually has for him. It was an extremely emotional moment that provided closure to a poetically beautiful episode, something I didn't expect before it started. The different lives of Tommy and Joel. Throughout this episode, one thing that was particularly interesting was Joel and Tommy's reunion. After a long time apart, we saw the brothers meet and embrace, and after only a short while, we saw that the pair had gone on to lead different lives post the cordyceps breakout, and the lives that they lived post leaving each other. Tommy had gone on to find a role and a place within the community within Jackson. He had a partner that was pregnant, which was Maria, and he was soon to be a father. You could sense the jealousy that Joel had of the life that Tommy had gone on to lead, especially when Ellie was talking about the living conditions that they'd been in, with Joel saying it wasn't all that bad, trying to show that he hadn't been doing bad whilst Tommy had been settled. The cordyceps infection breaking out stopped Joel's life from being able to be lived in its happiest of forms due to his daughter Sarah being killed. His whole world was taken away from him at the earliest point of the breakout, day 1, so he'd never been the same since. Tommy, however, had managed to find a life that he could thrive in, especially following the terrible things that himself and Joel did following the outbreak, something that hasn't actually been delved into that much, but has only recently been alluded to, with Joel telling Tommy about his mental state, his panic attacks, and about Ellie's immunity. I was certain that Tommy was going to tell Maria at that moment, but he didn't, and you could sense that Maria knew that something was up, especially following on from her saying to Ellie that Tommy followed Joel, as if to say he had no responsibility for his actions. She doesn't trust Joel, so I do wonder if that will come back to get him. The brothers have changed and they now have two different mindsets, but it seems as though their bond is something that can still not be broken. So it was nice to see Joel smile for the first time in a long while when they embraced. Joel's mindset. Joel's mindset was an extremely interesting part of this episode. We saw him in ways like no other before. We saw that he was having extreme panic attacks and felt as though he wasn't capable of protecting Ellie anymore, especially following on from the past encounters that they had, when Ellie had to save him, when he couldn't stop Sam, and also when he just stood there and was prepared to let the dog sniff her when it could have bitten her if it thought that she was infected. We even had multiple moments in this episode where he was having visions of Sarah, thinking he saw her in the street and then also thinking about her in his mind before he turned out the light, showing that the grief was still present. Being around Ellie has definitely caused his grief to take more of a hold over his mind, and it's resurfaced in a way that we've not seen before. Joel's story is similar to Ellie's in the fact that everybody that he's ever known has either left him or died too. Tess, Sarah, and his brother Tommy. Ellie and Joel just have each other and they're there for one another as we've seen throughout the show, but more so in this episode. I think when he awakens and is hopefully saved from his injury, I feel we'll see a different mindset to Joel. I believe he'll be more open with Ellie and will be grateful once again for her saving his life. His mindset did change slightly towards the end when they were traveling to the Fireflies. They were joking, conversing, and there was a moment where Joel was teaching Ellie how to fire a weapon, so I think his mental state is on the mend, and that's solely because of Ellie. Overall review. I thought this was a beautiful episode. We got to see Joel really take the lead in this one, and we saw sides to him that we'd never seen before, focusing on his past, his relationship with his brother, his protecting nature that he has for Ellie, and the want to show his brother that he made something of himself in this dark time was extremely apparent throughout. It was interesting to see a fully functional community within this world that was living a life like what you'd imagine in the real world, as we hadn't seen one in the show yet, other than the one that Kathleen was running, and it was just pure chaos. Episodes like this show that you don't need to have infected individuals in every episode for it to be a good one. Stripping it back, focusing on the characters, and allowing us to get a glimpse into how they're coping during this time is enough, and it can still make good television. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey really showed why they were the right choices for these characters in this episode, as their performances evoked emotions that I hadn't felt when watching the show before. It was so emotional. I'm looking forward to seeing how Ellie and Joel are going to get out of the situation that they're in, as it's not a good one at all. I feel we're going to see Ellie step up, something we've not seen her do before, so it will most likely be a defining point for the character. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. So, there you have it. The Last of Us Episode 6 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.